Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of our Vintage Autumn DIY series. So, in today's episode, we're going to finish up our childhood memories journal book. As you can see, we did the cover in the last episode, and we're going to finish that up by adding some pretty little lace detail for trim. And I'm also going to add some vintage seam binding, and I thought this seam binding actually worked really well with the colors that I picked for the fabric on the spine. So that's what we're going to do in today's video, as well as adding in some of the signatures that I'll show you here in a bit. So let's get started with putting this lace on. I'm actually going to cover up the seam of my fabric where my fabric meets the actual book. I like to cover up those seams with something. You can use rickrack, you can use lace, you can use another strip of fabric, but I'm going to use my Fabrifix and I'm going to use some of this lace. Now you will be getting some sort of a lace or seam binding as well in the kit when you go ahead and order your kit. I try to pick things that coordinate with the book that you get, so you'll get some lace and maybe even some seam binding. I think seam binding is one of the accessory items that you'll get, but you definitely will get some sort of a trim that will match with the fabric that gets sent with your mystery book. So I'm just using my Fabrifix to attach this little lace trim. This is a vintage lace. I'm sure I thrifted it somewhere. But I'm just pushing it down lightly just to cover up that seam where the fabric meets the cover, and I'm making sure that it's sticking really well on those edges because I don't want it peeling up. You can kind of go in after and put a little bit more glue like I'm doing here. I'm just kind of going in under these little flaps of lace, putting a little extra glue under there just to keep it down so it doesn't pull up. All right, so now we're going to open up the inside of the book and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to wrap our lace right around the inside seam of that fabric, and I'm just trimming this off. I don't want a whole lot of extra, so just trim it off. You will get enough lace or whatever trim in your kit to cover both outside and inside covers. So again, using that Fabrifix, I'm just going to put a generous amount right along that spine fabric seam, and we'll go ahead and wrap that lace right up, as you'll see here in just a second. Push that lace right up into that glue, covering up the seam and just pushing that down nicely so that it sticks. What I like about the Fabrifix is that it sticks really quickly. All right, so we're gonna pull this little top flap down, and there's gonna be a little section where I'm gonna need a little bit more glue right here just to hold that little flap down. You always want the inside of your book sticking really well, because I feel like when you open and close the book a lot, if you're working in it, this is the area that will tend to come loose if it's going to. So I always try to make sure that it's really sealed good. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, just like I did on the front here. I love using vintage materials. This seam binding is just such a pretty color. I just feel like new stuff isn't the same. So I always grab vintage crafting supplies whenever I see it. So I'm gonna just do a quick little strip of this seam binding right down like the center of the lace. And I'm basically doing the exact same technique to add this as I did when I added the lace onto the cover. I'm just using my Fabrifix. I'm just putting a little bit right down the center, and then I'm just going to lay that seam binding right into that Fabrifix. This, like I said, sticks pretty quickly, so I'm just going to hold that right on there and push it down lightly. Now be careful whenever you're using like a thin material like this seam binding. Sometimes it will leak through, the glue will leak through, and you'll be able to see spots. I think you could see a little spot on the inside of the book when I do the inside, but I just try not to push too hard. You know, with my finger when I'm putting this on. I'm kind of just like lightly sitting it on the glue. And then, like I said, I'm just wrapping this seam binding right around the inside cover and just doing the exact same thing, just to create a little bit of unity in a little finish. I like I like it to look finished. And I think that's what the extra little seam binding does, is it makes the whole seam or, decorative lace look finished. All right, so like I said, I'm just gonna wrap it around and just lightly push that down into the glue, and then I'm wrapping the bottom up, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue at the bottom here just to hold that little flap down. And yeah, then I'll repeat this whole process on the other side, just like I did on the front. All right, so I think that looks really nice. The colors look really well together. And yeah, I think that's gonna make for a good journal cover. So I have this digital sheet that I want to use. It comes from my digital kit. It is a vintage book page with this clown, vintage clown figure on it. It's one of my designs from my kit. And if you like the kit, you can get it in my Etsy shop. I want to use this on my back cover because I want to create a pocket. So what I am doing is the page I cut down to fit just on the back inside cover of my journal. So I am just using my Distress Oxide. The color is Shabby Shutters. It's like a really kind of pretty green color. So I'm going to just distress this entire sheet. Now, like I said, you can cut yours down. If you get the kit, you can cut it down to fit. It almost fits perfectly. I had to trim mine just slightly, but it almost fits perfectly on the inside cover of these books. But I'm going to punch just a little notch with my circle punch, like a half circle out of it, just so that you'll be able to tell that it's a pocket on the back cover of the journal. And then again, I'm just going to continue distressing the edges with this pretty green color. I really like this. I don't use this green color often, but I'm going to try to use it a lot in this book because I want to incorporate a lot of like greens and oranges and blues. I think blue is like a very unrealized color that you can use for the fall, but I think it works good in the fall for some reason. Okay, so as you can see, that fits perfectly on the back of my journal cover. So I'm also putting a little bit of that green right behind that little notch so that it kind of blends in nicely. But I'm going to take my Fabrifix and I'm just going to go around the top, bottom, and actually not top, bottom. Yeah, top, bottom, and side of my paper here to create a pocket. So I'm not going to put any glue on the notch side. You'll see I'll just go around the sides and then the bottom, and this is going to be a nice little pocket in the back of the journal, which I can stick extra ephemera, or I can stick photos or anything like that. I'll just have an extra little nice big full-size pocket back there. Now I didn't put any lace trim underneath this because I had planned on, I kind of decided last minute that I wanted to do this, so I made sure to cut my trim off so that there wasn't a bulky trim behind it. And then what I'm going to do once this is stuck down, I'm going to take my seam binding that I have that I was going to go over my lace trim with, and we'll just take the seam binding and pull the seam binding down over the top of the pocket just to kind of finish it off. So I'm just pushing down the edges here, but here's that seam binding. We're just gonna pull that right over the pocket, and that will just kind of finish it off without bulking it up like the lace trim would. So that's why I cut that lace trim off. I didn't want to use a bulky lace trim underneath this. So yeah, I was just using a little bit of extra glue that I had on my pin. So we're gonna just stick that down like that, and then we'll pull the bottom up, and then we'll have a nice back pocket on our journal. All right, so I am also including a little metal brad that has a ring on the other side that you can attach a charm to. I'm including one of these in each one of my kits. But I want to now put this in my spine. I like to put them in my spine so that I can hang a charm or something from it. But now is a good time to do that. Now, I have seen people put this brad in before they glue the inside of the fabric down so that the fabric covers it. However, you'll see what I'm gonna do. I do it a little bit differently. But basically what I'm making sure is that when I punch this hole with my awl through my spine, I'm making sure that when I open the brad up, the little top of the brad doesn't stick out the top of the book. So I'm just making sure that there's enough room for that. So then I'm going ahead and punching a hole right through, making sure that I use a little bit of cardboard so I'm not punching into my board. And also be very careful when you're doing this because awls are very sharp, and I have poked my finger before. So be very careful doing this. So you're just pinching that little brad shut, and you're gonna push it right through the hole that you punched. Make sure your ring is going upright, so that way when you hang a charm from it, it's hanging the right way. And then you're prying open those little fasteners on the back, and you'll see now why I wanted to make sure it was low enough, so that way that little top fastener wasn't poking out over the top. But again, make sure that it's hanging the right way so you can easily hang a charm off of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another little scrap piece of fabric that matches the fabric that I used on the spine. Just a little tiny piece. You don't need much, just like maybe an inch by inch square. And we're just going to cover that little brad up with the fabric. Now, like I said, you could do this before you glue that fabric backing down, but sometimes it's a little hard to finagle poking the hole through before before it's glued down. That's why I kind of like to do it afterwards. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my Fabrifix, and I'm just going to attach this little patch of fabric and just cover up that back of the brad. This little piece of fabric is going to get covered up with the signatures once you put them in the spine. So I'm not too worried about seeing it. Plus the fabric matches up pretty well. So it's just kind of like an easy little thing. You don't even really have to do it, but I just think it finishes it off and makes it look a little bit nicer when you're done. Now at the beginning of this video, you saw that I put down all of this different paper. This is all vintage paper that I've been collecting for the past, I don't know, quite a while. I've used some of it in other journals, but I've been collecting specifically for this children's book memory journal that I wanted to make. So a lot of these papers are more children friendly or children ephemera pages or things pertaining to children. So I want to now kind of group this paper into different groups so I can categorize what papers I'm putting in each grouping of signatures for the journal that I'm going to make. Now you can do 2, 3, 4 signatures, however many you think you can fit in your journal. If you do a thicker or wider spine, you can fit more signature groupings. But if you do a thinner, smaller spine, I would say only 2 to 3 signatures. Now, if you're just starting out, since this is like a beginner tutorial, I would suggest either doing only 2 or 3 signatures. I'm gonna probably do 3 signatures in this journal only because I have so much paper and I wanna try to incorporate as much as I can of it. So I'm going to organize my paper into different categories. So I'm gonna start out by taking out some of the paper that might not be strong enough to be on its own in the journal, such as these stickers. They're a little lightweight, plus one side is like a glue, so you would need to get this, if this got wet, it would get sticky and it would stick to a page. So I probably don't want to use this as a page on its own. And the same with this. This is like a really old vintage, I think it came from like a circus book of some sort, but it's just a really old page and it's very fragile. So this will be something that I might want to glue onto another page. Then we have this little paper doll booklet. I'll probably want to put this in separately, or put this, or maybe even take it apart and use pieces of it separately. But I'm gonna kind of just try to separate some of the more fragile pieces from the sturdier pages first. So I'm starting with my paper that I don't really need to reinforce first. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the pieces of paper that I want folded, and I'm gonna go ahead and fold everything and get everything prepped to be put into a signature. Now this is also another good time to have a bone folder so that you can do a nice flat fold on all of your pieces that you want folded. So some of them I'm gonna fold one way, some of them I'm gonna fold another way. Like I said, I'm just gonna go through all of these papers and make sure that they have a nice fold in them. Some of them already are folded because they were pulled out of other notebooks of such. So I'm going in and just folding everything and making sure that I like the placement of the folds. Now you can also fold pages. You don't have to fold them directly in half like I am doing here. You could fold them smaller on one side like this, and then you could fold the other side back in and make like a folio of some sort if you wanted to. I'm gonna try to be as simple as possible with these ones, and I'm just gonna give them kind of just a quick fold in half, almost all of them just a quick fold in half. All right, so these papers right here, they were bound down the center, so it is actually a larger piece of paper. I'm gonna actually cut these in half and then fold them, because I don't need that big of a page, and I have a lot of them here. So I'm gonna just get my paper cutter, and we're gonna go ahead in and just cut these ones down. I'm not gonna worry about the size of my pages quite yet. I just wanna make sure that I have pages that are not gonna need any reinforcing. So these ones, I am just folding those ones in half. And I'm gonna continue throughout this entire pile, just folding all of these papers that I know don't need extra reinforcing, and get those all folded. Okay, so I also wanna show you, I have this larger sheet music right here, and it's very big, and it's gonna be too big to fold just like this, because this is the size of my paper. So I'm gonna have to cut down a lot of that to make it fit to the size of my original page. So what I want to do with this one is I want to make a pocket out of it. So I am going to fold up the pocket on one side, and I'm just using an actual page from the original book that I have cleaned up, and I'm using it just as a guide so that I know how much to fold up my sheet so that it will be a good size page. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold that in half. So now I know that that page will fit into the journal book. And I'm not losing any of the print or any of the words from that sheet music. And we're gonna have a little pocket here, and we'll have a little pocket here. So any of the larger sheets, you definitely can do something like that. You can fold up areas of like this one, that will be upside down. Or if you don't want to fold anything and you want to make a smaller page, you can go ahead and just take your ruler, and instead of cutting, sometimes it's cool just to have like a cut edge or a ripped edge. I'm just going to rip some of these pages in half, and then I'm gonna fold them in half. Like that. So now they will be under the size that I need, which smaller is fine, bigger is not good. So now I'll have a couple of pages that are a little bit smaller. So you got 2 pages out of 1 really. This is like an envelope, like a cardstock envelope type of paper, and I liked this color on the front of it, and it does have a fold line in it about here, and then let's see, width wise it looks like it's about the right width. So just this little overhang, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a little flap with that. So now we'll have like a little, almost like a little booklet that we can use. So that will be a good size. So I have this coloring book page that is very fragile, and I want to use most of this vintage cover, which it's from 1958, and I like that there's some colored pages in here that was already done by whoever had this book. So what I want to do is I want to cut out the parts that I want, and that's going to be probably most of this right here. So I'm just going to take my page template that I have, and I'm going to take my pen, and I'm just going to make a little mark, top and bottom, on both sides, just so that I know where I'm going to need to cut. Now I'm just going to rip these. I can actually, no, I'm going to cut them with my cutter. So I'm just going to put this in here and line it up. And I want that portion. So let's just cut this off. And then we'll cut this side. That one pulled a little weird. That one got a little torn. That's how brittle this paper is it didn't cut quite straight because it's so brittle. So I'm just going to try to clean this up a little bit better with my, let me see if I can cut it a little bit better. Go slower. There we go. That cut it a little bit better, but it's so brittle. This older paper is just very brittle. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up and then put the pages, because there's 2 pages now. I'm going to open it up, put the pages together, and I'm going to take some washi tape. Now you could use the same tape that you used to reinforce the spine when we did that, but I think this is a little bit prettier. So I'm going to just use some nice washi tape, and we'll just glue that right down, or tape that right down. And then, still with it attached, we're going to flip it over. We're going to pull our washi tape up the other side and go all the way up to the top. And we're going to cut that off. And then we're going to just take our other washi tape and pull it down over. So now we should be able to fold this in half and have a much stronger piece that we can sew into and still be able to use these vintage pages. All right, so I have all of my pages pretty much folded and reinforced and kind of put into piles. These are kind of just like my regular size pages. These are the ones that needed to get reinforced. And these are like little smaller, like filler pages. So now I'm gonna set these all aside for now. I have a lot here. I have a lot of pages. I might not even use all of these because I haven't even gone through the book pages yet and added in some of the book pages I want to use. And I also want to make sure that I use some of my cardstock scrapbook paper as well. So I want to go through these and fold these up and get these to the correct size that I want to use. Now, the papers that I designed are designed on an 8.5 by 11 like US standard size paper. So these ones I should be able to just fold in half and use those, and they might just need minor trimming down. And I have 3 of those pages. So I'm gonna just set those aside. I have a couple smaller pages, which I'm gonna set this in my ephemera pack. I'm not gonna fold and use these yet. I might use these later for other pieces of ephemera or accessories or pockets or tabs or something like that. So I'm just setting those aside. Now I have a couple pieces of 12 by 12 scrapbook paper, and I'm gonna use these to make like a pocket page. All right, here is my template page, and my template page measures about 5 1/4 wide. So I don't want this page to be longer than 5 1/4. So like if I fold it in half, it's gonna be 6. So what I'm gonna do is so that I don't lose this paper, I'm gonna cut it down ahead of time. I'm gonna take my cutter And I have a little jagged edge on this side, so I'm going to use this side to cut it down about an inch, even a little bit more than an inch. All right, so now I have, I always save my scraps too. Don't throw your scraps away. I have a pile of trimmings and scraps because those are going to be used at some point. Okay, so now when I fold this in half, this should now be about the right size. Yeah, that's just about 5 1/4. I'm actually going to trim it down just a little bit more because I want it just under 5 1/4. I don't want it sticking out. Okay, so now that should be good. All right, so let's move this out of the way. All right, so let's make a pocket. On this side, which is just a white side, I'm not using double-sided paper, I want to fold up a pocket. So I want this pocket, when I fold this paper, I don't want this to be longer than my actual page. So I'm just making sure that when I fold this, this is just a slight bit shorter than my actual page. Fold like that, and then I am going to fold. You can either fold it like this so that your pockets are on the outside, or you can fold like this so that your pockets are on the inside. I'm actually going to fold it so my pocket is on the inside for this one. So I am just going to fold that in half now, and this is where your bone folder definitely comes in handy. Sometimes it's hard to get a good crease where you've folded on the back side. Okay, so now we have a nice cardstock page that has pockets on the inside, and it's the right size for our journal. So I'm gonna do this with the 3 12 by 12s that I have. All right, so now I'm going through the actual book pages, and I'm picking out some of the pages that I really like in the book, and I'm just taking my little craft knife and I am carefully cutting out the pages. I'm gonna trim these down just a hair because I think they're slightly off. Just take my trimmer and just trim these just a hair. And just like we did before, we're going to take our washi tape and we are going to just attach these together with some washi tape. All right, so now we have a nice book page that we can include in our journal as well. All right, so I have decided that I'm going to do 3 groupings of pages or signatures for this journal, only because I have so many pages. I don't want to bulk them all into only 2, so I think 3 will be better. If you don't have as many pages, you can definitely do 2. It might be easier to start out with 2, but I just wanted to show you how 3 would work as well. Now, like I had mentioned earlier, I want to use my digital papers that I created, one for each cover of each signature. And I've also used a little vintage paper doily to kind of decorate the outside of the 2 outer signatures. The inner signature has this nice lace doily print on the paper itself, so I'm just going to keep that one as is. So now basically what I want to do is I want to go through all of my papers and designate them to each signature. I'm also going to designate a center page for each signature. Now I like to use like a heavier cardstock for a center page because it helps hold that signature together better. So I'm going to use these large 12 by 12s that I folded into pocket pages as center pages. So I'm thinking that we'll do the balloons in this one. I'm not going to put them all in yet, but I'm just going to lay them where they're going to go. I'll do the camera in the last one, and then I'm going to use this little small pocket or folio that we folded out of an invitation. I'm going to use this one in the center one, so that one will be slightly different. Okay, so then let's go through some of the other pages and just separate them for each signature. So I have 3 sections of book pages. So let's do one in each. I'm kind of keeping the center a little bit different than the other 2, just to keep the variation, keep it variated. Okay, and then let's do a coloring page on either one, and we'll do a flashcard in the middle. We have some more vintage pages, and then we have this record page that we'll keep in the middle. I also have another record page and the other vintage coloring book page. We'll just do those for now. All right, so I think those are all of my vintage pages that we had to reinforce. Now they're not gonna go in like this, but I'm just separating them right now. All right, so now let's go through some of the other pages that I have. So I have lots of writing pages and ledgers. And again, let's just kind of scatter these. And we'll put one like this. And we'll put, because a lot of them I only have 2 pages of. So we'll just kind of scatter them, you know, front and back. This was an extra. I'm going to put that one aside. I don't think I need that one. Do these 2 here like that. And then we have some more vintage book pages. Just put random vintage book pages, 1 in each. Actually, let's do this one in the center, this one here. There, that one there, that one there, that one there, one here, center. We have music pages. I'll put that one in the center. More vintage book pages. I have a lot of vintage book pages. I'm probably not gonna put all of these in here because I just don't have room. So anything I don't use, I'm just gonna set aside because that can go towards other kits that I send out. And then more vintage, and then we have writing pages. So I'll just put the writing pages on here. Maybe I'll do 1 more vintage book page in the center just to kind of keep it even. Okay. And then this one, I don't think I'm going to use either. I'm going to set that one aside. It's a little too thick. And then I have my smaller pages that I'm going to kind of scatter throughout. And then we'll do our 2 paper bags front and back as well. So they're all about the same thickness. They might be slightly different, but we'll keep them all about the same thickness. Okay, so now that we have each pile separated with what pages are going to go into what signatures, I'm just going to separate them, and I like to use clips. I have these little clips that I got at the Dollar Tree. I use these to help hold together all of my stuff or all of my pages while I'm working on another page or another signature. So we're just going to clip these together and set these aside, and we will work on our first signature. Here's our cover, and then here are all the pages that we designated for this specific signature. Now we want to open them up. Okay, so now is when you want to be a little bit creative because you want to create a variety of pages when you're flipping through it. So you want to try to do different pages. You don't want to do 2 of the same thing next to each other, basically. And also I want to make sure that I'm keeping this thick pocket page for the very last page. All right, so let's start out with maybe something simple like some writing, like a writing page. I like to kind of do a writing page. Maybe like every other, we'll do a writing page. So we'll put that one in there. Then let's do a vintage book page. Now look, as you see, I'm opening these all up as I'm laying them down, keeping the centers, as I'm putting them in, I'm keeping the centers all together. Again, just opening up these pages, laying them down, randomly putting in pages as I see will work. Again, if I put a book page, I will also like to do something that I can write on after the book page, like a journaling page, and then something with pictures, and then maybe another book page, and then a writing page. And let's do another vintage page. And we'll do some small pages added in. So this is just creating variety. Of pages when we go to open them up. We have a lot of pages here. So this is going to be a fairly thick journal, which is fine. The more pages, the better. Okay. Now, what I am going to do with these, the little paper bag page, is I am going to put my center page in first, and then I'm going to put my paper bag in, and then I'm going to do another small little writing page on the very center. So we'll have this little small center piece inside of our large folder. Now we're going to fold everything back up, and this is a chunky one, so we don't have to put this on right yet, but I am just folding it all back up here just so that I have it all in place. Now I can also see that I'm going to need to trim down a lot of the edges. So again, I'm going to do this same process with the other 3 signatures, and then we'll start to trim down the edges. All right, I have my signatures all bundled together and ready to be trimmed down. I've gone ahead and trimmed down one already, so you can see what it looks like when it's all trimmed down to size. It will fit perfectly into our journal. As you can see, it's not too big, it's just the right size. Now, I'm gonna show you how I go ahead and do that. So I'm actually gonna do my front cover, which is going to be this one right here. And as you can see, I've bundled everything together and I've pushed everything in as tight as possible, just how the pages will be in the actual journal. Now I want to make sure that the bottom is flush, but if I have smaller pages that I don't want sitting at the bottom, I want to make sure I go in and sit those pages more towards the middle. It's like in the very center, I have some smaller pages. I just want my smaller pages to sit in the middle of the signature, like this paper bag. I want to make sure that's sitting in the middle. I don't want it pushed down to the bottom of the page. So once you get everything where you want it, go ahead and clip it shut again with your clip. Make sure it's nice and tight. And now what I do is I will take my straight edge, and this is again why I like using a straight edge as opposed to like a paper cutter, is because it gives me more flexibility to cut things like this. So I'm again using my straight edge, and we're just slowly cutting right along the edge of that front cover. So as you're cutting, you can kind of pull away the strips that you're cutting and get them out of the way, and then just continue cutting along the edge of your straight edge. All right, so I'm cutting carefully all the way through all of the different layers of papers that I have, and then just moving them aside as they become free. All right, so now once we have them all trimmed from the side, you'll see we have a nice flat edge and all of our pages are nice and even. And then we can do the same with the top because we know our bottom is straight because we lined that up already. So again, lining our straight edge right up against that top cover. And then again, just making your cut right down through those pages and removing them as they come free. There we go. Now I waited till the end to show you the center signature because I'm not going to cut the center signature the same way, only because I have a few pieces that if I cut right down the side, I don't want to cut flaps off because I have this center piece that has a flap like this. So I'm going to remove the flap because that's right in the center, and I think everything else is okay to be cut first. So let's just line our bottom up. We'll clip our signatures back together. We'll use our cover as a guide, and then we'll go ahead and start cutting just like we did before. Okay, so now that I have my center signature all trimmed down and even, now I can go ahead and put my little center folio back in. Now this one, I'm not gonna mind if it sticks out a little bit, only because I'm probably gonna be putting some tabs on this anyhow, and it doesn't stick out a lot, and I like the color of it, so I am just going to keep it as is. All right, so now that we have all of our signatures cut to size and put together the way we want, I'm gonna make a template so that we'll have a accurate way to put the holes in each one of our signatures so that we'll be able to sew them into our actual journal. So what I'm doing here is I'm making just a paper template out of a scrap piece of paper, and I'm making sure that it's the same height as each one of our pages. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I find the center of this template. Now you could do that by just folding it in half. I'm just using my ruler really quickly just to find the center mark. I'll make a little mark with my pen. That way I know exactly where the center is of my page. And that's going to be where I'm going to put a center hole when I go ahead and punch the holes in each one of my signatures, and also when I punch the holes in the binding of my journal book. Now I also want to consider where this little ring is that I have. I don't want to punch a hole right where I have the ring. So around 1.5 inches below the top of the journal book is where I'm going to start my first or my top hole. So I'm just measuring down 1.5 inches from the top of my template. I'm putting another little dot. So then I'm going to measure in between the top dot and the second dot, and I'll know how much I have to put for a space in between my second and third dot. Hope that makes sense. So then I'm just putting my third dot, and then the only other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that these dots are all in a straight line, and how I can do that is by measuring the width of my paper and making sure that I'm in the center of the width of my paper, which I think I am. I think I'm just about centered. So I should be good. I'm just doing a quick little measurement here just to see, and it looks good to me. So I'm just going to keep it where it's at. Again, I'm just measuring all of them to make sure that they're all at the same location. All right, so once I have my template done, now I want to find the exact center of the spine of my book. So I'm doing that just by measuring my top and bottom and my sides, and then just making a little mark right in the center, which would be halfway. So as you can see, there's my little center point right there. So now I know exactly where the center of my spine is, and I know where to start my first hole. So I'm going to punch my awl right through my center little dot that I did in my template, as you can see here, and I'm going to use the point of that awl to just hit that little center dot right there, and then just carefully I'm going to go kind of like in a rocking motion and a spinning motion, and just push that little hole right through my spine. Also, I'm going to flip it over. Be super careful when you're doing this. I always kind of open my fingers up so that I know my awl isn't going to puncture my fingers when I'm pushing it through, and I push very gently in just a rocking motion. Definitely make sure that you're an adult doing this, don't let a child do this, and be very careful when you're doing this, because I have punctured myself before and it hurts. Okay, so then again, just lining up my template so that I know that I'm straight, and I'm going to go ahead and punch another hole up top. Again, using that same kind of rocking motion, just moving it back and forth slowly. Try not to push like with a lot of pressure, just do it very gently, and it will go through. And then do the same thing at the bottom, and this is how you're going to make your holes for your signatures to be sewn in. So as you can see, I'm going to just do top, middle, and bottom. Now, I like to punch from the outside in, because when you're punching through that fabric, it kind of pushes the fabric upward, and I would rather have it be more flush on the outside than the inside. So I did 3 holes on this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do another set of 3 holes both on the right and the left, so because we have 3 different signatures. So what I'm doing is I'm just measuring over from my center hole. I always work from my center hole. I'm measuring over, making another little center mark, and that's where I know I'm going to have my second hole. As you can see, doing the same thing on both sides. And I'll do this top and bottom. So I'm just making my marks now from my original holes that I punched. Just making the marks, measuring it out exactly, and then again up at the top, making my little holes. And then we can go back in with our awl and punch all of the holes for the 3 signatures. All right, so now I have all of my holes punched in the spine of my journal book. As you can see, I got the 3 at the top, 3 in the middle, 3 at the bottom, and they're all ready for the signatures to be sewn into. But for now, I'm going to set the cover aside, because we're going to use the same template that we used in the spine to punch the holes into each one of our signature groupings. So I'm just taking my signature clip off, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up to the center, as you can see here, and then I'm going to take my template piece and I'm going to kind of fold my template piece in half. And then I'm going to take my template, and just like it's an actual page that goes into the signature book, I'm just making sure I have a good fold on this, really good, so that it sits nicely in the center of that signature. I'm going to take my template and I'm going to set it right in the very center of my signature pages like this, and I'm going to kind of keep my signature almost not closed, but I don't want to open it wide open. I want to almost keep it keep the pages more closed when I punch the hole through. And again, I'm just using my awl, and I'm using that rocking motion back and forth to go through that very center hole, and just feeling when it starts to push through. And then you can push it through a little further if you want, but just use that like twisting, rocking motion. Don't ever use like harsh, forceful motion when you're using an awl. Just use very kind of like steady, slow movements. I found that works the best, especially when you're punching through many layers of paper. Just kind of keep working at it, and it will eventually poke through. As you can see here, it's just gently poking through, and I'm keeping those pages almost closed shut. I'm not opening them up wide. And I'm doing that because it allows me to sew the pages into the signature, or the signature into the journal cover easier if the pages are kind of closed shut. So you'll see here, it's hard. It's kind of hard to get through this little lace doily that I have on the front here. I'm using just a little piece of washi tape to kind of hold that doily in place because it's not big enough for the clips to hold. So you don't have to put a doily on the front like I'm doing. I just like the look of it. I think it just gives each one of the signatures kind of a decorative look. So again, I'm taking my little awl and going through the holes, making sure that they're punched all the way through, and I'm going to do this for all 3 of my signatures until I have the holes punched into each grouping of signatures. So it's fairly easy, a little tedious, but just go slow with it. Don't, force it. Don't go hard. Just rock it back and forth slowly and it will pop through. We are now ready to start sewing these signatures into our journal binding. So I am using like this embroidery thread. It's a little bit thicker, but I am using 6 or more times the length of my pages for each signature. Now, I know some people don't do this. I like to double up my thread when I'm sewing it in. I just find that it makes the pages a little bit more sturdy. So I'm also using a number 20 chenille tapestry needle, and it's the one that have the nice wide eyes that you can easily put thread into. However, I also like to use a needle threader. It just makes threading these needles so much easier when you use one. So as you can see, I just push it through the hole. You take your thread, put the thread through the needle threader hole, which is much more wide. Just pull it through and there you go. So easy. So then I am pulling my thread all the way through so that I have an even number of thread on both sides. And I'll go down to the end just to make sure that I'm even at the very end. As you can see here, just making sure that it's even. And then we'll pull the thread all the way up so that the needle is at the very top. So this gives us about 3 times the length of the page once it's doubled up. So then what we're going to do, as you can see here, there's my thread and ready to go. We're going to open up the center of our signature, and we're going to be putting the first signature in. So it's going to be on the right hand side of the outside of the book, left hand side of the inside of the spine. I'm going to go in through the center hole, and I'm going to keep my needle like halfway through, and I'm still holding my needle on the other side, and we're going to poke that little needle through that center hole of the left hand side of the inner spine. So poke it through just like that. We're going to pull it through. And we're going to pull it all the way through, leaving only a little bit of a tail at the end. Now what I like to do is I like to take that tail and I like to clip it up underneath the clip that I'm holding my paper with. So that's why I kind of like a heavy duty clip when I'm doing this portion of the journal. This is probably the hardest part of the journal making process. Because it takes a little time to get used to it. So then I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to go in through the top hole. I'm going to pull it through. I don't want to go too far though, but I'm going to use that top hole, and this is where you want to kind of try to easily poke that needle right through that top portion, if you can see there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of finagling to get you started, especially when you have a large grouping of pages like I do. But we're just gonna finagle that needle right through. All right, once you've got it through, then you're just gonna carefully pull it through the center, pull it all the way as tight as you can get it, and keep that signature page as close to the spine as possible. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back down through the middle again. So we're going to go down through the middle and again, kind of flip your book around so that you can get through that hole to come back out the center hole again. Try not to split your thread. You don't want to split that thread in half. So it, again, takes a little bit of practice to get good at this, but don't worry if you have to, finagle it around for a little bit. All right, then you're going to go, again, pull it tight, and then you're going to go down through the bottom. I'm just making sure my center is tight here. So then you're going to go take your needle and go down in through the bottom, and you're going to go through the bottom section of holes through the signature. And again, it helps to kind of keep your pages closed. Remember how I punched the holes when the pages were closed? It definitely helps to keep the pages closed when you're trying to poke through those large groupings of pages. So there it is. It's coming up through. I'm going to pull my needle and thread all the way out, trying to keep it as tight as possible on the outside. I'm always going back checking, and then I'm going back through the center again. Back through the center again. One more time. As you can see, here's the needle through the center. Again, pulling that thread all the way out. Oops, I got it stuck around my around my clip, but we're pulling it out tight. All right, and then we're gonna go back up to the top. I'm gonna go in through the top a second time. We're gonna pull it out from the top. So this is your second time around. And instead of going down in through the center hole again, we're gonna skip the center hole and go right to the bottom hole. And we're gonna go back out the bottom hole. So back out the bottom, pull it through the bottom, and then we're gonna go back to the center, through the center with the little bit that we have left here, trying really hard not to split those strings. And then we're gonna come up through the center, pull it as tight as we can. We're gonna loosen our clip. We're gonna take our string and we're going to tie a few knots, just making sure that the back is all nice and tight. And then I do like 2 to 3 knots in the center here, like this. 1, 2, I think I do 3 in this one. Yep, 3 knots. And then we're gonna go ahead and clip it off with some scissors. And you can trim these down a little bit as well so they're not sticking out the sides of our journal. But here is the first signature sewn right into our journal spine. So we're going to repeat this process with the other 2 signatures. All right, so as you can see, I have all 3 signatures sewn into the spine of my journal. I love it. It is nice and thick and they're in there nice and sturdy. That's why I like to double up on that string or twine, whatever I'm using to bind my signatures, but they're all in there nice and sturdy, and I don't have to feel like I have to be delicate with the pages because I know that they're in there nice and strong. So here's all the signatures now sewn in. Just kind of flipping through just so you can see how it all turned out. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. If you would like to journal along with us this month and get your own vintage book sent to you, make sure you check out the link in the description below so that you can be part of our vintage mystery book pulls. And stick around for more videos in this series to come. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.